Florence, Britain's exit from the European Union has been effectively delayed until 2021 after Prime Minister Theresa May announced a two-year transition period during which the UK's relationship with the EU will remain virtually unchanged. It means freedom of movement will continue for another 4 years, with Britain paying its full contribution to Brussels of around £9 billion $15 billion per year in that period. In her long-awaited speech in Florence, Italy, Mrs May set out plans for a status quo implementation phase after Brexit takes effect in March 2019, with the UK and EU maintaining access to each other's markets on current terms and under the existing structure of EU rules and regulations. The 35-minute speech was aimed at a European audience, and Mrs May stressed repeatedly that she wanted to build a constructive and deep relationship with the EU after Brexit. However, she faced an immediate backlash from Tory Eurosceptics who said Britain would not be able to reap the benefits of quitting the EU for 5 years after voters chose to leave. Mrs May said that after Brexit she hoped to usher in a new era of cooperation. The strength of feeling that the British people have about this need for control and the direct accountability of their politicians is one reason why, throughout its membership, the United Kingdom has never totally felt at home being in the European Union. And perhaps because of our history and geography, the European Union never felt to us like an integral part of our national story in the way it does to so many elsewhere in Europe. UK's Brexit. David Davis attends Mrs May's speech. Photo. Bloomberg. Downing Street hopes that the optimistic vision of the relationship and the offer of a large financial payment will help kick-start the stalled EU talks in Brussels, which will start again next week. The EU reacted positively to the speech, although it represents a major gamble for the Prime Minister, as millions of Leave voters are likely to be angered by the decision to abandon a clean Brexit until 5 years after the referendum. Theresa May proposed a period of transition after Brexit takes effect in March 2019, aiming to give certainty and clarity to companies worried about the looming split. Photo. Bloomberg. Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, said talks could now move forward as he gave a guarded welcome to the speech's constructive spirit. Allies of senior cabinet ministers, including British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, stressed the speech was far more positive than previous drafts. The centrepiece of the address was the formal announcement of a transition period of around 2 years. Mrs May said the final length of it should be determined simply by how long it will take to prepare and implement the new processes and new systems that will underpin that future partnership. British Prime Minister Theresa May delivers her speech in Florence, Italy, on Friday. Photo. There were signs of friction with the Conservatives' parliamentary voting partners, the DUP, whose leader Arlene Foster insisted that the transition period should be kept to an absolute minimum. The former Tory cabinet minister Owen Paterson said the terms of the transition period meant, "We're still bound in by European rules and we can't get cracking and open up markets around the world." Mr Johnson claimed victory after Mrs May ruled out a Norwegian-style arrangement with the EU. He tweeted, "PM's speech was positive, optimistic, dynamic and rightly disposes of the Norway option." There were accusations that Mrs May gave away her strongest bargaining chip, access to Britain's security and intelligence might, by saying the UK was unconditionally committed to maintaining Europe's security. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn claimed Mrs May had adopted his party's policy. She also said that when there was uncertainty around underlying EU law, "I want the UK courts to be able to take into account the judgments of the European Court of Justice with a view to ensuring consistent interpretation." The phrase rang alarm bells for some Leave campaigners who felt it put the supremacy of Britain's courts in doubt. Britain will now be free to start negotiating trade deals in earnest with third-party countries, but they will not be able to come into force until 2021 at the earliest. Telegraph, London.